So, Rhino, here we are. We're in Gus's house. We're about to head off after a lovely evening. What was the sort of abiding memory of Gus's house then, beside the tales of Everest and wild surf?
Well, am I allowed to talk about the wonky bog?
It's a wonky bog. He's trying to keep it like one of those base camps or something. He's trying to keep the Mongolian experience going, isn't he?
Perhaps that it is. We just need to live life on the edge, and that's what Gus is all about.
That is, we came round and we, lovely hospitality on behalf of Gus. I brought the fish and chips in. Rhino brought the beers round, and we've sat Gus down, had this amazing story. And then a couple of breaks along the way, and every single time it's like, don't touch the bog, boys, it's not fastened to the floor. But I think that sums Gus up, doesn't it? For as serious as the stuff that he does, the wonky bog.
I really think it is. I think he's just, that is the wonky bog.
Yeah. So guys, to hear the rest of it, besides the wonky bog, stay tuned. Angus Ruddle coming up. Surfing, no matter what they tell you, is about lifestyle. It's what we all strive to get right.
And today's guest is the gold standard. He works hard and he plays in ways many of us could only dream of.
Charging in Indo, jetting to far-flung corners, sailing or even Everest. Gus has no shortage of life experiences, but he's earned it all right, doing one of the most high-stakes jobs there is.
Welcome to Crest, Gus.
Thank you.
Now, because of how special a person you are, Gus, we've gone deep into the archives and we found the perfect co-host. It is our most popular former guest of all time, Rhino Thomas, back on the show, this time on the other side of the mic table. Now, Rhino, I understand, was your neighbour growing up. Is it true?
Yeah, he was. In fact, actually, if it wasn't for Rhino, I was grovelling around in the surf, one day. I think you were about 12, just surfing away, and I just thought, right, I really need to try and improve here.
And now I look up to you, Gus. You're my inspiration.
Yeah. That's surfing.
Now, there's Rhino's intro. That's about the third intro he's had on this show now. The Crest treatment wouldn't be complete without a little bit of an intro for you as well, Gus. The lion's share of which, as is only fair for his presenting debut, is going to Rhino to deliver.
Well, thanks for that, Tom, I think. Well, yeah, I think just going back to mid-lockdown, actually, in May there, I've just finished the podcast with you and Rob, Tom, and you said at the end of the podcast, could I suggest anybody who would be a likely candidate for future shows on the Crest podcast? And I didn't really have to think for too long, but Angus Ruddle came to mind. And in fact, Gus and his brother, Ben, were my neighbours in my street, and both of them were the sorts of people who are just totally committed in the way that they live their lives. Both of them fantastic surfers, and that's thanks to how much thought they put into doing things so really, really well. But in the case of Gus, it's not just surfing where he's absolutely at the cutting edge, Tom.
Literally, actually. Or is that a horribly inappropriate pun?
No.
Yes. Dear listeners, you
slashing
heard...
like surfing.
I hadn't thought that. Look at that. Coming up with a better pun than the writers. Yes, listeners, you heard an allusion to doing a tough job in our intro. Well, Gus is a consultant vascular surgeon. We'll learn a bit more about quite what that means down the line, no doubt. We've all had a huge reminder in 2020 of what we owe our heroes in the medical profession. And what I can say, in crude and simple terms, is that people place their lives in his hands. He might smile and laugh as much as anyone you'll meet in the surfing world, but behind that grin, that wetsuit, those scrubs, I'm milking this, aren't I? is clearly someone who has a very serious side indeed.
Yes, and it is that serious side which actually gets you into many of Gus's best tales. The hours he works are long and grueling, but this is a man who knows how to reward himself. Well, I say reward, but Even there's an element of the masochist to how Gus spends his free time between shifts. I can attest to his credentials as a surfer. And a boat trip to Indonesia, Gus, for example. Tom, Gus will go over the ledge on almost anything.
And when Rhino says that, he means it. We'll be hearing about a few sessions from that trip later, hopefully.
But beyond surfing, some of the things Gus has achieved are simply out of this world.
And those are actually the perfect words for it. Surfer, surgeon, sailor, horse rider and mountaineer. And it's the latter that merits the out of this world tag more than anything, because the summit of Mount Everest is in fact situated in a part of this planet in which human life is impossible.
Surely a surgeon is going to know better than anyone what's happening to the body in those upper reaches of the Earth's atmosphere, Gus. But does that put him off though? Not one bit. Tom, I hardly know where to begin here.
I reckon the steelworks. Might sound a bit odd, but you did hear me right.
Yes, here in South Wales we have these iconic landmarks, and none more so than the towers and the fairy lights of Porthcawl. And it was there where Gus got one of his first tastes of the world of work. Gus, when you started in the steelworks, did you really see yourself as one day being where you are now and what you're doing now?
Yeah, I did.
I like your positivity.
Working in the steelworks was like fantastic though. I think if I hadn't worked there, I'd have just turned into some sort of yappy twat. I kind of guess at the start, because of through school I worked hard, and I assumed you know, if you didn't work hard at school, you didn't get your qualifications, then in actual fact you ended up doing a labouring job in the steelworks, which is what I did. But when I worked there, I just found what fantastically funny, intelligent, motivated people they were, who just absolutely just took the piss out of me non-stop, and brought me down to earth. And I think actually if I hadn't worked there, I'd probably been a bit of a knob. Well, more of a knob than I am
now. There's a bit of a sense nowadays that people just try to get into some of these jobs. I'm not referring to the steelworks now, I'm referring to your current source of employ. That people try and just get into these jobs just because they think the job looks kind of cool. It's almost a sort of a materialistic idea of sort of wanting the reward, but without thinking about what's actually.
Well, they actually think the job is going to make them something.
Yes, rather than the idea of becoming the thing they need to be to do the job, isn't it?
Yeah.
What were your motivations to go down the path that you did?
To be honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was quite bright at school, not the best, but. I was fairly bright, and I could work hard, and I never even really wanted to go to university, and in fact I nearly got thrown out of school. So I did quite well in my O levels, and then A levels I kind of just thought, well, what's this all about, and and then didn't put any work in whatsoever, and then nearly got chucked out. And then, have you ever seen that film Chariots of Fire?
Yes.
Eric Liddell or something.
Yeah, brilliant. So I went to go and watch that with my parents, somewhere, and which is all about people I think in Cambridge, and then I suddenly just thought I really want to go to university, and I realised I'd blown it because I had done no work for nearly a year and a half, nearly been thrown out of school, and been to very many lectures and all that kind of stuff. But then I decided, I did want to go to university. And if I was going to university, I might as well go for a long time and do a long course, which was medicine. And to be honest, it was as arbitrary as that. But then I had to catch up for a year and a half. So I realised I didn't really have enough time to do that. So I had to start getting up really early in the morning and studying for a couple of hours before school. Obviously go to school, study a load of hours after, and then I'd have to do all the questions from the chapters of the books that I'd missed for a year and a half, and I used to write them down on, I don't know if you ever remember the old computer paper. I used to write them down on the back of that, and then I used to go to the school the next day, and I just went to the local state school, Porthcawl, which is superb, and And then my teachers there, like Ted Cart, Mrs. Hillary, Mr. Rowett, Mr. Tingay, in their lunch hour, used to mark like all the stuff myself produced like homework. Yeah. So in actual fact, even though I'd like dossed around for a year and a half and like taking the piss really, like, you know, they could see actually that like I was going for it, and in their lunchtime they used to go through all of the questions and stuff for me. And then when I applied to university, like I got 5 refusals all in one go, which is absolutely unheard of because my expected grades were like so bad. And then obviously, like when I did my A levels, I did really well in them, and then and which was thanks to those teachers. And then like one of the local MPs got me an interview in Cardiff Medical School, even though I hadn't like applied there. But by that time, I just thought, right, no, I can choose what university I'm going to go to. So I took a year off, worked in the steelworks, and then went to the university of my choosing then. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting what you said there about the teachers in Porthcawl Comp, because I can remember sitting in a classroom. I don't know whether you remember, there was a teacher called Mrs. Davis who did biology.
Oh, yeah.
And she was recalling a story of a student from 10 years previous who had left school. And kind of what the story that you just relayed just then, but she told us of how that you used to revise and how obviously it was kind of very last minute. And she described, and I've got this picture in my mind of your bedroom just with diagrams of hearts and veins all over the wall and all over the ceiling. And she said that you just basically buried yourself in your room for like 4 weeks pretty much before the exams.
Yeah.
But with that said, like obviously becoming a doctor isn't like a straightforward affair.
I'll stop you there though. Mrs. Davis, who was originally Mrs. Powell, there's payback in life, isn't there? So like she was a fantastic school teacher.
Yeah.
And actually, she like helped me enormously through those exams.
Right.
And sadly, she's passed away now. But I looked after her in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
And it was just like it was, you know. So it's like it was nice to be able to like give something back because she was cool.
Yeah, she was a fantastic teacher. She really was. But but with this addiction to surfing or affliction with surfing, does it make it harder or like easier to take on like the challenges of becoming a doctor stroke surgeon throughout the training? Was there really did it help you in any way, or was there
to be honest, I came to surfing quite late, so probably towards the end of like medical school, and I'd say you know, so I'd surfed or just bimbled about all the way through when I was like younger, and but then when I actually finally qualified, and so that's probably the time that I'd have like the most disposable income, and then there's like Gary, I think Scrofe was there, Di Pig. Like we all went to Fuerteventura for an absolute wreckage surf trip, and it should have been the time in my life. I mean, I just qualified, like I had the most money, I was all nice and respectable, and I just went for like, and we just had like a pretty wild surf trip there, and that was the start of my surfing really. So yeah.
Well,
yeah,
it was Southampton you went to.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So what else do you then have to do to get to, you know, that job in the end? Casualty, I'm assuming, in them.
Yeah, well, so you do like get your A levels, go to medical school for 5 years, then you do house jobs, which is a bit different to house jobs now. And I know like all the junior doctors will just be like, oh, you're always saying it wasn't like it in my day, but I mean it really was. Go to work on a Friday morning, and then like you'd work day and night, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, till Monday afternoon, and everyone's just like, oh, you can't possibly have done that, but we did. And then Monday it'd be like your night off, and we'd be on what's called a 1 in 2, so it's like either sleep or go out. And so we used to go out, and then we used to go to work like Tuesday, and you'd work all Tuesday, all the Tuesday night, and then Wednesday night would be your night off, and like by then you'd probably need to like sleep. But I mean, it was brutal, but you saw like lots of patients, got loads of experience, and actually like it simplified life to like just basically eat, sleep, work, have fun.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah,
That seeing lots of patients and lots of different things is really important. Then
yeah,
behind that, you've got to have that base before you specialise, right?
yeah. and I think now, well, with like European working time directives, etc., like you don't have those like brutal hours and seeing that number of patients, and that's a big loss for the profession.
Right.
Yeah.
So, to where you are now then, right, I promised the listener that we'd learn this. What exactly does vascular surgeon mean?
Vascular surgery is like bypasses on arteries, and so if you imagine like a central heating system, like you've got the boiler, which would be like the heart, so the cardiac surgeons like deal with that, and then we deal with all the pipes that come out of it that go to the brain, the main aorta, which comes out of the arteries to the legs, and it's good, but it's pretty demanding, because once you start an operation, there's no way back. Like it's once you like open an artery, or then you have to see it through, and actually I think that's the thing that's like special to vascular surgery is, and you know, there's the people that are attracted to vascular surgery, like it's that kind of black and whiteness to it, and you know, pretty much there is no bailout position. So like once you start, you're in for the ride, and sort of
There's no vascular operation then that can be like a bit of a success. It's either
pretty much either they go well, or like, you know, if there's a problem, then, you know, basically you've cut off the blood supply to whatever you're operating on it, be it like the brain or anywhere else, and the results are pretty catastrophic if that happens.
Right.
So but I mean, you kind of have to like plan to avoid those situations, and that's the art of it. Yeah.
Crikey, yes, it's pretty stressful just listening to it.
Yeah, it is.
You know? I mean, you know, just bring it back around to the surfing side of things. Like, with that sort of level of pressure in your job, like, is the role of surfing in your life, is that a good release for you? Obviously, it's good for your mental health, exercises as well. But how do you use surf to?
No, to be honest,
release?
like I absolutely love my job because I love that aspect of it.
Right.
And in actual fact, I think that kind of like carries through into my surfing, and because I think like where I surf best, and I don't surf well at all, but where I surf best is, you know, when it gets like really like extreme, and then what I consider extreme, and then you really like focus, and that actually the more black and white it gets, the more I enjoy it, and actually the better I perform, and yeah. But I mean, the real thing that like surfing has brought for me has been like friends and people that like bring you down to earth and stop you getting like too much up yourself, and sort of, you know, and actually it doesn't matter what you do or how you do it, like it's you know, that's what I loved about it. It's just like that natural acceptance or rejection, and you get that from proper surfing community.
Yeah.
And
And it's that surfing community. Has that sort of helped you to make the decision to live by the sea? Obviously, you could have lived inland doing the job that you're doing, but I guess you could have still surfed a lot during the time off. But
I think, to be honest, I couldn't have lived inland.
Really?
And no, I mean, like all of us, like we've always had the sea, and whether we swam in it, surfed in it, sailed in it, and you know, and in actual fact, I'm just about to open a can. That's the noise.
I was going to narrate that for the benefit of the listener, but you haven't done that.
do you mind if I take a slurp as well?
Yeah, but no, for me, it's like really important to just be able to like walk to the beach. It's like really special to like be able to go down there, whether it's rainy, like windy, and actually bump into people that, you know, you've known for a long time. I can remember one day when remember when there was all those massive storms and there was like huge waves
in 2014, I think that was.
Yeah, so like I walked down the beach at like about 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and like the surf was like huge, but like there you were, and like we're just like, right, fancy it? And like, you know, that's great. That's just like a doorstep adventure, isn't it?
It was brilliant.
Just like,
that was fantastic.
Just think like, sure.
I know how Rhino knows that date. It's because it was the year of the bank at Pipe. It was the year your daughter was born. Because Rhino lost the best session of the whole year.
Is that a good story?
Because his daughter had been born.
I did actually miss the day of the year of the day of days of all the years they were that day. But hey,
It's, at least he can remember it was 2014.
Yeah, that's good.
But you say, Gus, that you obviously live your life in and around the sea, and you couldn't live away from it. But one of the other things that obviously you're doing quite a lot of recently is sailing. Like, how did that come about?
So, like, as a family, like, we sailed since I can remember. And, like, the great thing with sailing, so, like, generally, we used to sail dinghies. So there's two of you in the dinghy. There's, like, one person who's, like, basically helming the thing, calling the shots. And then the other person's at the front, sort of dealing with some of the sails and things, and we're used to race. But I mean, the good thing about it is, like, even as a kid, like, you're racing against adults, and, like, you're making decisions, calling the shots, and actually, you're racing in, like, heavy winds and sort of, and so it, like, teaches, and you've got to get down there, like, rig the boat, it's freezing cold, put it in the water, all the sails are flapping, and it's, like, stressful. And then you, like, sail, and which is also, like, quite, like, stressful, but in a good way. And then you come back and you have to put the boat away. And but, like, you're doing that and you're competing with the adults, even as a kid. And like it like taught me that it was great because it's a bit like surfing. Like, you've got, like, grommets and you've got, like, older people like Crest and and actually everyone's the same,
right?
And sailing was the same as that, and it just. You learned to communicate on that kind of, like, level, and it was all about, like, ability and go for it. And it didn't matter how old you were or what you were, it was just like, it was like a level playing field, and that's what I liked about sailing. And, like, now, sailing is just like a doorstep adventure. Like, you just get on the boat, like, the sea is, like, infinite, and there's nothing to stop you going, like, as far as you want to go.
Fantastic.
And, like, so, like, sometimes. Like, I'll finish work on, like, a Friday evening, like, I'll rush out of work, get down to the harbour at 9 o'clock, it's just, like, getting dark, and, like, and it's partly back to the junior doctor thing, is, time is precious, and you just got to think, right, well, it's getting dark, I can either not go sailing, or just sail in the dark, so, like, so then, like, you just set out, and then I'll just sail to, like, Lundy Island or Ilfracombe, over the course of the night. And again, like, no sleep, just like when you were a junior doctor. And then, like, sleep in the bottom of the boat, pull the sails over the top of yourself. Like, in the morning, there's phosphorescence in the water, and
wow.
Seals, like, going round, and then sail back. And, you've just been to another world. Like, totally, like, we go off on all our, like, surfing trips, and, like, all of us have been to, like, everywhere that's kind of, like, exotic, but in actual fact it's kind of like an exotic and a kind of danger, like, right there, immediately available. And I
was going to say that the sort of trips that we do as surfers, and perhaps the trips that you do as a sailor, are like night and day. I guess we have all the sort of comforts and we can fall back on just going back to the hotel or to the tent, but where, like, if you're on a sailboat and something goes wrong, you've got to sort it out there and then. You've got nobody else to rely on, I guess, if you're doing it solo.
But I mean, it is lovely though, because it is just like adventure, and it's not just adventure. And I love sailing by myself, and sort of it's just like there's a freedom that comes with it, and sort of it's a bit like when you get on the aeroplane when you've been working really hard and you're going off on a surf trip and your first gin and tonic arrives and you just think, right, no one can get hold of me now.
What's the boat called, by the way?
Impromptu. Now there's a story behind that as well. So me and my brother Ben, so we decided, I don't know why we decided, we hadn't sailed for years, and then we just thought, right, it'd be great to have like a little sailing dinghy. So we bought this sailing dinghy, it's like 15, 16 foot long, like no cabin on it, and we bought it on a Friday, and then we brought it down in Poole, we brought it back to Wales, and then like on the Sunday, we took it down to Cornwall. And then we set sail and we thought, right, we're going to the Scilly Isles. So we sailed it to the Scilly Isles, which was like just amazing. And then we spent a week, and so the boat is called Impromptu because we didn't name it that, but it just happened to be like we bought it. and then we just thought, right, let's get on with it, and we sailed it. And when we got back from the Scilly Isles, because everyone in Penzance Yacht Club like knew we'd left, and they were just like, ooh, right, I don't think that's a good idea.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah, and when we got back to the yacht club, we got back, like a week later, having we set off at like 2 o'clock in the morning into like a real like strong easterly wind, but I had to get back to work. And we spent all day battling our way back, and we got back at about 10 o'clock at night. We went into the yacht club, and then we had like a standing ovation when we were in there. And we didn't pay for any beer.
No.
And I tell you who was behind the bar was Colin. I think his name's Brightman, the bloke who surfed, had the record.
Oh, Colin Wilson.
Wilson.
Yeah. No way.
Yeah. He was just like you boys like surf, and yeah, we do, and
He's a great guy.
And so he knew Herbie and everyone from around there.
That was the guy that used to run the BSA.
That's right.
wasn't
Yeah.
it?
And he surfed the Severn board, and they made a program about him, and
That's right.
so he was behind the bar at the yacht club.
No way.
Yeah.
Can it get kind of a bit lonely as well, the sailing? I mean, maybe even lonely in a good way, because I remember you telling me that Lundy tale before, and it sounded like it was, sort of, I think Emily Williams in one of our shows a little while ago called it type 2 fun or something like that, kind of great, but not for everyone.
It's I wouldn't say it's fun, but I think for some people it's just necessary to do that kind of stuff to keep yourself happy, and it's kind of So I love all that kind of stuff, and in actual fact, although you're out there by yourself, actually you sometimes you're least lonely in that situation. You can be lonely in a crowd, can't you? And sort of
so you're team working with yourself, aren't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I just it's nice when literally you throw caution to the wind and you just think right, what happens, and sort of, and it's a bit like with the climbing side of things, you get yourself into some sort of situation with climbing. I mean, climbing is frightening, and or can be, and but you get yourself into a situation where you just think, right, I have to move now. There is no choice. You just think, right, I have to move because I can't stay where I am. I can't go back. So the only way is up or down, very quickly down. So and in actual fact, there's a clarity that comes with it, and actually you just think right, that needs to happen. If it doesn't, I'm gonna fall off and die. And so and there's no bravado about it. You just think, right, I need to do that, and it needs to happen now, and there's a kind of simplicity that comes with that, and it's the same with sailing out to sea or whatever, and in actual fact, there's a peace that comes with it as well, because you pass stressing by that stage, you just think, right, well,
And have you gotten into a pickle at sea?
Not so much at sea. Because because we all live here, I've always considered myself a good swimmer, and I just think and as well we have grown up on the sea with waves and stuff, and it probably will go bad one day, but if it does, you just think well, okay, I've had a massive fun in the meantime, and so
it's going to happen in the end anyway.
Yeah, exactly. As Mike Metcalf says, none of us are going to get out of this alive.
It's written on the wall.
You mentioned there as well other landlocked activities that have taken some of your time, and you have gone on some trips that, to the sort of regular surfers who are off on our normal surf trips, might consider quite unusual. I remember at one point you saying that you were going to go away to Argentina, I remember going, what spots are there then? And you said, no, you were going there
horse riding.
So
which is fab.
Where else have you horse ridden?
Everywhere really. I've ridden Mongolia, South Africa, on horseback safari, where you just blasting along in the herds of zebra. It's like being the shoal of fish.
And you're in it.
Yeah, you're in it, and they're rubbing up against your leg, and they're the herd changes direction, and you change direction with it, I've ridden across Central Asia, so Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, into Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So coming from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, that's the west side of Afghanistan then, is it?
To the east. So Kyrgyzstan is towards the east.
Oh, there's my job.
And then and then you come west through Tajikistan, which is just amazing, and then into the Wakhan corridor, which is in Afghanistan. And I mean that was like a 6-week trip, and it was an organised. Well, it started off as an organised trip, but then people were just like using their sat phones and calling in helicopters and 4-wheel drives to take them away. And the more disorganised and the more out there it got, like the better it was as far as I was concerned.
That's you all over, guys.
So, like, I think we ended up with about 4 of us actually rode our horses to Afghanistan. Like everyone else was
fantastic.
And we just left horses all over the place. But yeah, that was an amazing trip. But and then I've ridden across ridden everywhere really.
You said you've ridden across the
Andes, yeah.
The Andes, right?
Yeah. So that was like north of Santiago, and again, that was an organised trip. Like I just paid my money and like just turned up. I mean, beautiful. Like we lost a horse on the first day because of the tracks that we were going along were so narrow, and like precipitous. And, like this horse just like kind of bumped his backside on a rock, and like the next thing, just like. He was gone, and horse riding is like brilliant. It's a bit like surfing because they kind of like, you interact with people. Like you just get there. Like if you turn up on a horse and sort of, and like it's an immediate like in like and
like sailing. It's how the original adventurers of this world would have done it, isn't it?
Yeah. Or horse like. When you think like there are horses everywhere in the world, like you can turn up, like you can cover any ground on a horse. It's like exhilarating. Like horses just like give you like a nice like feeling. They're like mellow, and it's kind of like companionship. And then you just rock up in like in the middle of you get hundreds of miles from any road or whatever, and you just turn up. And there's all these nomadic farmers and sort of and. You just kind of go and say hello, and in whatever language.
And it is hello that you say, or is it?
Like in Central Asia, because the Russians were there, so like it's good to know like a little bit of Russian. I know like a couple of words. But you turn up like in these gurs, these big round tents that are like in the middle of nowhere, and there's always these dogs out, and like nasty dogs. Or that they've had their ears and tails cut off, so the wolves can't get hold of them.
Oh wow!
And then so like you turn up, and then they bark like mad until like whoever's in the tent comes out, and then when they like the dogs like see that like you're a friend, they go quiet, and then you go into the tent, and they milk the horses. Everything comes from like horse milk, so they make like kumis, which is like fermented mare's milk, which is like slightly alcoholic. And like in his tent, so you're hundreds of miles from anywhere. Like you go into the tent, they give you a big silver bowl which is full of like this kumis, this fermented mare's milk, and it gets passed around to everyone. Like you have to sing a song, so I was like singing the Welsh national anthem, and you sing the song, and then you have a drink, and and then you just like sit drinking vodka with them, and like and that's it, you're in. But if you don't go up and introduce yourself, and like if you just like turn up on your a horse and like set up a tent near them without like saying hello, like they'll probably nick everything that you've got.
Oh,
but like if you go in there, like
that's
you're
your
their
acceptance.
guest, and like and so those are good times.
You talk about travel, and there's a lovely wistful smile that comes over your face when you do it. You've got that wanderlust gene, haven't you?
I just love like big open space, and I love meeting people, and I love geography, and I love like isolation, and actually, so much of the world now is so like attainable. Like we could like sit here today and just say, right, go on Tom, go on Rhino, let's go to Antarctica, and we'll be there tomorrow if we had the money, and which we have, and and so like. It's just nice when there's still like culture and geography that's kind of like semi-untainted.
Can I ask you like quick question then
Yeah.
with regard to travel, because you talk about all these different ways and the excuses to travel, right? Because if you had good waves on your doorstep, if you had a big mountain behind your house, if you had good terrain, you'd still travel.
Yeah, you would, definitely. It's just good to see what's out there, and in actual fact that also makes you appreciate what you've got here, and because we've got it all here, and it's nice to go and see everything else, but you come to like realise that you've got everything that you need here, and actually COVID has like taught everyone that as well, isn't it? It's
absolutely.
kind of like admittedly we've had nice weather, but like you just think, right, it's been quite nice in a way not to like stress about going abroad. Like I mean, I have a lot of time off, like 4 or 5 months of the year, and and it's a major. I just think, right, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do with that time? And sort of, and there's a big stress associated with that. And because of like the whole like COVID thing, you can't go anywhere. So you just think, right, I'm going to enjoy what's around us, and we've got everything here, and like friends, experiences, geography, the whole lot, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's kind of. And in actual fact, like all these countries that you go to, like so you go to Mongolia because you think, oh, that's right out there, and sort of, but like where do they come when they want to go somewhere that's right out? They come here, It's, yeah. And actually, I was sat in a tent in Mongolia, so like literally, like hundreds of miles from anywhere. Like I'd ridden there on a horse, and I was sat in a tent. And it's like one of these big round gur tents, and they had like a motorbike, and they were like nomadic pastors. And you think they're poor, but in actual fact they're not. And then I was talking to the guy, and he was just like, yeah, my son is studying in England. He's at the London School of Economics. I'm like,
that's fantastic.
I'm like, I'm sat in a tent, and like you just think, oh, these are poor peasant farmers and whatever. They're there because they want to be there.
Yeah.
And and in actual fact, like this guy was like loaded. And like his family had always like had cashmere goats and all this kind of stuff, But yeah, he knew all about, like, you think you're out in the middle of nowhere. He knew all about London. Like, he's paying for his son's fees there, and like
Cool, that's fantastic. Because I think I've been lucky enough to go on quite a few trips with you, and I think some of those trips I class as probably some of the best trips that I've been on in my life.
Well, I'd also say though, it's like I consider myself really fortunate to have been able to go on like surf trips with the likes of yourself and like other people, and that's been the nice thing about like Porthcawl is like like to be able to go like surfing with everyone, and like and as well to like surf in the way we all do, and which is like everyone goes for it within their own like abilities, and like everyone's there to have a laugh, and in actual fact, like wherever we turn up, like our crew is like respected,
absolutely,
and that's due to like attitude, and it's been lovely to be like to be accepted into that, and to have that, which has been like super precious.
Yes.
And it's all the, I mean, like you can have all the like these like statement things like being a surgeon, or like and everyone's got them in their different like things of life, but in actual fact that's more important to me than any of that, and sort of and when everyone's like hooting you into waves into oblivion.
Come on, Gus!
And they want it to go wrong for you.
And it does, but I mean, but that's fantastic, though, isn't it? Like,
it really is.
Yeah, it is. Like, you just think like, right, that's good.
So does that mean then that the trips that you've been with your closest pals on these surf trips stand up as like the best trip? It doesn't necessarily mean that to have the best surf or the best location. Is it all about the company?
Yeah, it's about the company and about the attitude. Like, a load of people who are determined to have a good time and like make this work for you, and like you can turn up. Like, we've all been on surf trips where the waves have like been like lame, but like you're still going to have a good trip.
Absolutely.
And and in actual fact, everyone there is going to like contribute, and so that's good. Yeah.
Rhino was telling me that on a trip to the Mentawais, lances got very big, and that you played an important role in ensuring that the boat stayed put. Is this true?
This is one of the things, Gus, where I learned something about you that day, which I don't know whether I should have known, but I certainly found out that day. I remember pulling up at HT's, and it was a crew of 10 of us on this boat, and we pull up to HT's, and it's kind of closing out. It's pretty big, and everybody's umming and ahhing. And we've been there for like a good 20 minutes, and certain members of the party are saying, right, we need to go north, we've got to go and find some shelter. And, there's some of us are like, oh, should we give it a go? And then next thing, I sort of look out the corner of my eye, and I can't actually repeat what you said, but I can just hear a splosh. And then just seeing you stroking out leisurely, just going, get on with it. And
once one man's off, the boat can't.
And so Gus is gone, so we're anchored. That's it. And then everybody else follows. But I think that was, for me, I learned something about that. Is it reckless abandon?
No. Well,
calculated risk.
No, well, like the thing that I absolutely hate, indecision, and when you think we were sat on that was a pretty talented crew of surfers on that boat.
That's very true.
And I must say I wasn't one of them. And but you just think we've come this way, and it did look quite intimidating, wouldn't it? Which is why everyone was sat on the boat, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And but I just thought nope. We've come to have a go at this, and I go out there and take my punishment, which I did.
But then later that afternoon we sailed round the other side of the island.
Oh yeah,
and we ended up pulling up at Lance's left. Now at this time,
it's quite chunky, that wasn't it?
Well, this is the thing, which I didn't realise, is Lance's left hits the main part of the swell, whereas HT's is a bit more of a wraparound.
Yeah.
So by the time we pulled up round there, we knew it was pretty big, but what I noticed about you, paddling out, that you would obviously surfed big waves in the past, because both you, not just yourself, you and Ben in that session. I try not to put a size on the waves. it was hard to say.
It was quite chunky, wasn't it?
It was big. It was really big. But you guys just seemed so comfortable. It was just incredible to see that happen. And obviously it comes from trips from Hawaii in the past and bigger waves.
I made sure for that surf trip that I was fit. So I've done loads of paddling. And when we paddled out of the HTs, the first 4 waves that I took off on, I just went straight over the falls and got dragged the whole length inside, underwater, and then I just pop up and I just think oh god, paddle back out again, take off on the next one, just get hammered again. That happened 4 times in a row, but I was fit for that trip. And and then I just thought, right, okay, I kind of got this, I knew where to sit, and I probably had some, I wouldn't say the best waves of my life, but some, but that was a good session, wasn't it?
It certainly was. Okay, guys, so May the 17th, 2010, 10:30am, age 46, you summited Everest, I guess was the pinnacle of your mountaineering career. But
to date,
but taking it right back to the roots, what on earth possessed you to get into mountaineering? Obviously, coming from Porthcawl, I don't see any mountains around locally to us here. What's the story there?
Well, again, I suppose it just comes down to freedom. So, my dad had a big book of big box of books. There's a tea chest, and it's full of books like the Gorilla Hunters, and sort of they were all these 1930s adventure stories. There was a load of mountain. My dad was in the mountain rescue team, and so he had loads of mountaineering books. And it was about the time Chris Bonington was. They were trying the southwest face of Everest. So there was a load of books came. So and I read a lot when I was a kid, and so and actually I think that inspired a lot of things. But then. like we always used to climb on the rocks in Porthcawl.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have any ropes, and sort of like lunchtime we'd go and climb. So like now these are all like, you know, these are like recognised climbs.
Oh, really?
And we'd be there like in our Clark's Commandos like, at lunchtime, like no ropes, no nothing, like climbing up all the cliffs in Box Bay, and me and my friend Pete Maxwell, and then we used to. Even like age 14, like we get on the bus and we go to the Lake District, and like, you know, we go camping there for a week. But there was a thing called Pavey Arc, which is like a big cliff that everyone used to like climb up. We didn't have any ropes, so we used to climb up next door to them without any ropes, and sort of, so that's kind of how it started. And so I always like read about mountaineering, about climbing, and like I kind of always like thought. You know, when I was a kid, I just thought, wouldn't it like just be amazing, like if I could climb Everest, and like, you know, I had a real burning desire to do it. Wow. And then 2 friends of mine from Porthcawl, Dave Howley and Bigsy Ron Clark, they are 2 amazing characters. Like they went to Everest Base Camp. They basically like hitchhiked up through India, went to Nepal, and they'd seen Everest, and I just thought, oh my god, that's like amazing. And then I just thought it'd be great to actually see Everest. Well, so then I did. Like before I went to university, I went to Everest myself. I just got on a bus and went from Kathmandu in Nepal to a place. Lobushe or somewhere. Anyway, I trekked in, like it took me a month by myself. And actually the last bit of the trek I was with a load of Tibetan refugees, and I went to base camp. There was no one there apart from there was a British Army expedition there. Right. And then I didn't have the right equipment. I was freezing to death. I used to have to sleep between 2 Canadian guys who had big warm sleeping bags just to try and not freeze to death in the middle of the night.
And that's not that's a real thing, freezing to death. Oh
yeah, I mean it was cold, and then I tracked back, and I thought, well, you know, that's great. It was fab to see Everest, but I thought I'll never get the chance to climb it. And then I heard about some guy who paid to go on an expedition, because really you had to be an ace climber to go to Everest. And then I heard someone paid to go on an expedition. He was a really good climber, and I just thought number one, I'm not wealthy, and number two, I'm not a really good climber. And then years on from that, after a big contract wrangling work, I found myself with a lot of free time and a lot of money, and I just thought, right, I'm gonna give it a go. So I didn't tell anyone about it, and I just kept it all quiet. I didn't want to worry my parents or anyone, and I kept it to the last possible moment to tell everyone I was going. And actually, Gardner was one of the first people I told. I said, I'm going to Nepal to climb Everest. And I said, I don't know whether I'll get there or not. And he was just yeah, you will. And and that is the positive of our crew, isn't it?
Yes.
Whereas in other parts of the country, everyone would just be you'll never do that or whatever. He was just go on in, and cool. And that was a dream come true. But I mean, it wasn't that is probably 30 years of daydreaming, and probably 10 years of a lot of planning, getting fit, getting the necessary experience, getting the money. It's a big undertaking.
So there's the whole so to speak training for Everest. It isn't just cramming for exams 4 weeks before. You've got. Does it essentially start from pretty much when the dream is popped into your head? That is your journey. There's no training. You're always.
Yeah, for me, I think it pretty started. I mean, and there's different styles of climbers. I think on Everest. For me, I was always an independent unit. So even within our expedition, you get people who would be bitching about the conditions or the preparations and stuff, and I'd just be thinking well, no, we're here, and it's up to us to make it happen. And we've paid for all this infrastructure, Sherpas, oxygen, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to get yourself up and get yourself down and deal with whatever comes in between. And in actual fact, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that you're going to come down or if you're not up for that, then you shouldn't be here. And and that's been a great thing about growing up in Porthcawl, is like that independence and that kind of, just like, right, it's yeah. So
it starts at base camp, right?
Yeah.
And all I know about base camp is from movies.
Yeah.
and I'll be honest, I don't think it's somewhere I'm going to end up going in this life. But what is base camp actually quite a sort of mission to reach in its own?
Yeah, I mean, say, like, I've been there like 3 times now. Like, the first time when I was 18, and but actually tracking to base camp, that's quite like an undertaking, and it's beautiful. I mean, but
What altitude is base camp?
19,000 feet.
19,000 feet. I'm trying to turn that into
Meters. So like 5,000.
Oh, right, higher
Higher than anything in the
than
Alps.
the Inca Trail then. Dead
maybe.
Waller's Pass is 4,009, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's somewhere around there.
So that's the starting point.
Yeah, and so I mean, even just walking around in base camp, or even like going to the toilet, because you have to like squat down to go to the toilet. That's a major physical activity. Just thinking like, whew, I feel a bit short of breath now. Like you have to walk around slowly and like.
La Paz, I think, is 4,009, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe,
like
yeah.
Like.
But yeah, so like, but base camp's high and it's cold. So you're sleeping on a glacier, and at night it's kind of all popping and like groaning, and there's like you can hear all the avalanches coming down around you, and like base camp's like quite a place.
And how long do you stay there?
3 months.
In base camp?
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole expedition takes like 3 months, so
it can't be the same height as La Paz then, can it? If you're going to stay there for 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, you can stay there for years if you wanted to, but
I guess the Sherpas are there the whole time, most of the time.
No. They just come up for the expedition and then they go back to camp and do it.
Is it like a little village? Has it got a shop? Has it got like a
No. It's just a glacier, so there's like crevasses and and like all the tents like are cut on platforms in the ice, and like base camp's like quite a serious place. There's like a tiny little tented hospital there, but I mean, it's basically like a tent, and
you kept your field of expertise a clever secret at that point, and did you?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, that's one of the things on like these expeditions. Like, as soon as they hear you're a doctor, like you're getting called to like this, that, and the other all of the time, and which is fine. Like on the tracking,
toenails and things
and like there's everyone's getting like altitude sickness and things, but actually, when you're on the climb, like it's whether you're a doctor or not is fairly it was in my mind fairly irrelevant.
What do you do to pass 3 months at base camp?
The whole you get there, like you track in. So the whole process takes 3 months. So you track in. That probably takes like 10 days, 2 weeks, because you need to like go in slowly to get to that altitude. Then pretty much you don't do anything for a week. You just like sit there and acclimatise that altitude. Like maybe you'll do some crevasse rescues, all that kind of stuff, and then you have to like start trying to go up the mountain. So you go up through the Khumbu ice fields, which is like super dangerous, and you get up as high as you can in the day. You get altitude sickness, which is just like having. Well, I only can like describe it. It's like the worst possible hangover you've ever had. Like you feel sick, thumping headache, no energy, you can't sleep, you can't breathe properly. It's like going to altitude is dreadful, and then so you go up. You maybe like camp like for about 1,000 or so meters up above base camp. Like you'll feel terrible the whole time. Then you'll come down, and then you recover in base camp for a couple of days. You've already lost masses of weight, and then after you've recovered, you'll go back up again and you go higher. And this time you'll get to your previous altitude. You feel absolutely fine. You'll go even higher. And then you have to go through it all again, and so you spend 3 months like going up and down until like your body adjusts, and until you get to like about 25,000 feet, until you're acclimatized to that level, and then you come all the way back down, which takes you a couple of days to get back down the mountain, and then you sit in base camp, and then you just basically try and recover because you're screwed at this stage. and then you just wait for a weather window and then go for the summit. And so.
And then you obviously got that weather window, and I remember reading the vlog on Jagged Globe one evening, and they wrote the fact that you were going to go for the summit the very next, and like I can remember the hairs on my back of my neck standing on end, and obviously I was really relieved to hear that you had summited. But what you're up on the summit then, like what happens? I guess you're elated, or is it an anticlimax, or is there a celebration?
It's not an anticlimax. I'd say it's a massive, like for me, to get to the summit was a massive sense of relief because of, this had been something that's probably like been burning in my brain for like maybe 20 years to get there.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, it was a one-way journey. I wanted to get to the summit. I couldn't care what it takes. And I didn't care whether I didn't come down. Like, I had like an absolute head-on to like get there. And actually I knew that if I didn't get to the summit, because of whatever, weather, or that I just thought like that is going to really fuck my life up. Because of, I'd have had to gone back there next year. It would have meant like financial ruin. I'd have had to sell the house to get the money to go again.
Yeah.
I'd have had to probably resign my career. That would have been the beginning of like, to have not got to the summit would have been, that would have had major ramifications. And in actual fact, I think like the whole Everest thing probably did for my marriage. And, but, it's, and if I hadn't got to the summit, like I would have still just given everything to have gone back again. And, so to have not got to the summit would have been really bad. So to get to the summit was a huge sense of relief.
Yeah.
And,
you're free.
Yeah. Till it starts again.
There was two questions I thought were but the one which really I wanted to ask whether it was a myth. But when you returned down to base camp, the story that there was someone special to you that met you back there. Who was that?
Yeah, it's my mother. I'm not even sure how old my mother is. I think she's 76 now, so she'd have been younger then. But yeah, she'd tracked into Everest base camp. So when I got back down from the summit.
So this is the 10-day trek up to 4,000.
Well, no, she'd been it'd taken her a month to get there because she'd gone over all these other passes.
And so she's at this nearly 5,000 meters.
Yeah, and I get down from the summit, and in actual fact, the journey down from Everest was fantastic. So we summited, and then we got down to the South Col, which is at 8,000 meters, which is the start of the death zone. The people that I'd been to the summit,
meaning the zone at which a human can't survive. You mean the death zone?
Yeah, I mean you basically everything starts to go wrong above that height.
Right.
And but anyway, I got there, and then I was feeling good, and so then. There was another storm coming, so I thought, right, I'm going to get down the mountain. So I descended the mountain by myself, which is, was beautiful because I had the whole mountain to myself. No one was going up, no one was going down. I was just down by myself, abseiling down, just totally alone, stopping from time to time to look around because I was just thinking I'm never going to be here again probably, and actually I'm never going to have this to myself again. So I spent 2 days going down by myself. And when I got down to base camp,
camping to sleep then or not?
Well, I went down to camp 3. I spent the night there, and then carried on down from the bottom. I had a massive fall coming off the Lhotse face. I slipped, and I was on fixed ropes, but anyway, I got down to safely. I got down to base camp from all of that, and then my mother had tracked in there, so she was waiting for me with a piece of fruitcake, cup of tea, and that was that was
that's the icing on the cake.
It was nice, and we spent some time together, and obviously I was super acclimatised. So I'd been there for 3 months. So we walked out for a day or two down the valley, until I made sure she was like safe, and then I went back up to base camp. Then, for the rest, just see the rest of the expedition down. Yeah, but that was cool.
Amazing,
Yeah.
absolutely amazing story.
Yeah.
And can I ask some of the more big questions as well? There are reminders, aren't there, on the way up
Yeah.
of what can go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, well, in actual fact, there is a mortality associated with it, and
you see corpses, don't you?
well, actually, you see people that actually you were talking to like 2 days before, Ryan. So there's like like when I went there, there's like a Russian guy who's just like dead on the ropes, and it's just like one rope to go up, and so you have to like climb all over him to like carry on, and I mean, there's dead people all over the place up there, and
there's one famous one, isn't there?
Oh, Green Boots, is that right?
no, that's on the other side.
Oh, right.
So that's if you go up from the Chinese side, and so he's like frozen in there. But I mean, there's there's like dead people all over the place up there. But to be honest, it's pretty hard to tell who's dead or who's not, because of even like on summit day, like you've got just people just lying in the snow, like not going anywhere, up, down. Like you don't know whether they're dead or whether they're alive, whether they're on the way up or whether the way down is kind of like it's particularly like on summit day, it's a kind of it's like a big step into the unknown, and to a certain degree, it's kind of every man for themselves, and.
So there's no stopping to help people. Is that like not etiquette, but it's just kind of an unwritten rule?
Well, I think really, and everybody like says, like everyone knows the risks. Everyone like accept or should like accept the risk. Like you just think like if you're going to go up there and you're going to go into those kind of places, then like if you get into trouble, then you are going to die, and actually you can't expect other people to like. Risks themselves to save you, and actually, and I just think like you go up there, it is like a bit of a lottery, and you just take your chance, and like if you could help someone, then you would, I suppose, but and I've heard of people like giving up the summit to like help people down, and and I just think
That's not in the deal, is it?
No, well, but that
you
wasn't.
Wouldn't want someone to do that to you.
No, and in actual fact, like I just it was like it was a one-way mission as far as I was concerned, and the other people there, I would hope they also made that decision, and if they didn't, and then they get into trouble, and then they're like bitching about like people not helping them down or whatever. I just think like. Once you leave like the South Col and the Death Zone, I just think like you just take what comes, and and if it's going to be your day, good, and if it's not, well, you're just gonna have to like suck it up, and like that's that, isn't it? And I'd like hate to think that like someone would actually put themselves at risk to, and actually that's not part of the deal. Like I just go up there. And like I just think like everyone just accepts that like you've abandoned yourself up there, and so if it all goes bad, then like you just take the consequence, and then in actual fact, that's a certain thing in like modern life, like say like going out surfing or going out sailing, all of the things we do, there is like this element of like people are just like, well, you're putting other people at risk by doing what you're doing, and like and I kind of resent that, because actually like there should be like a clause which is just like I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and like
because otherwise nobody would do anything.
Yeah, and I don't want any of you to like be like coming out, and I certainly don't want any of you trying to like limit what I'm going to do, but and so yeah.
After something like that, how does it feel to return home and to be sitting in the quaint seaside town that you grew up in? Is there a bit of a come down? Is there even maybe a risk of like sort of sinking into feeling low?
No, not really. I don't think. I mean, it's like that was a burning desire for me, and then you just like there could be like a void after that, but I very much like a day at a time. I just think, and even now, I still look back on it and just think, well, actually, that was something I really wanted to do, which I have done, and actually I risked everything and gave everything for it, and but it, that was yesterday, and and actually it's just like today's another day, and it's let's have a good day today, isn't it? Or so I don't look back, and actually, you're fortunate if you've got inspirations, or if something that really grabs you. I don't beat myself up if there's not another one coming. But there are things where you just think, actually I'd quite like to do that, or you just take it as it comes, isn't it?
So what are those things then, Gus? What else have you got on the horizon? Obviously to top Everest is a difficult feat, but
to be honest, I'd love to get just one of those massive stand up size of a room barrels, I really would, and and I just think and I would risk and give anything for that. I just think and I just love to have one of one of those I don't mean I'd want a magazine shot, but I would those pictures you just see where someone just stood there, they just got this gaping barrel all around them, and they're just charging along, and I just wouldn't want to be just in the mouth of it. I want to be right back
in the maw.
Yeah, you would. I want to be right back, and and that's I just think
a one-way journey again.
It might be for my level of ability, but I mean it's I'd love to
Well, Nazare isn't too far away, Gus.
That's not really a barrel though, is it?
Well, I don't know. You can ask Glyn Evans that, I suppose.
Yeah.
He was on the podcast, wasn't he?
He'll whip you into something. Mullet Moor, maybe.
Yeah, over an island.
I'd want to paddle into it though.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Of course you would.
His cake and eat it, didn't he?
Yeah, but that'd be good. And actually, back to the horse riding side of things. I can remember when I was a kid reading about the Silk Road, which basically goes from China back to Italy. And actually, I've ridden a lot of it anyway. But I'd quite like to ride that, and I probably will actually. I mean, this but I just take my time, and bimble along.
Yeah.
And that'd be cool. Yeah.
Fantastic. So in the corner over there, Gus, there's in the wooden box there's some complicated apparatus, which I forget the name of actually. What's it called, Gus?
Sextant.
A sextant. So that's what is that? This is part of some unit to measure the stars, is it? So you've been into astronomy lately?
Yeah, that's been the whole COVID thing, isn't it?
Oh, right.
Okay. So that's fine. It started off with I read this book by a guy called Tristan Gooley, which was all about the natural navigator. So how to find Polaris, the North Star, and how to navigate from that. So I thought, right. But I've got a bit of time on my hands because of the whole COVID thing, so I'll find out some more about this. So I've been learning about astronomy, and then me and my dad have been teaching each other, mainly he's been teaching me, Astro Navigation, which is where you measure the height of the stars at certain times and things, and then you can work out wherever you are on the planet, and that's what the sextant's for.
Wow.
So it's been great because of, so I've learned all about the stars in the last few, and I bought a pair of binoculars, and I've seen the moons that go around Jupiter, and Tom knows loads about all that kind of stuff.
Did you see Neowise the Comet?
Yeah, which was fabulous through with the binoculars, and now the meteor showers
coming up in the next few nights. Yeah.
So
can you keep binoculars still enough for Jupiter's moons?
Yeah, well actually, say I got a big Velux window that looks south, so I can just rest them on those. So yeah.
Oh, you rest them on.
Yeah, so they're fab. Yeah, and my uncle, who's he's got a massive telescope, he's 80 something or so now, so I hope that's going to come my way when he passes on. But he's been hugely into astronomy, and he was telling me about there was some comet that smashed into Jupiter. I think it was in about 97, and he was actually watching that through his telescope
when it happened.
Yeah, so he said Jupiter was spinning, and then you could see these big black dots
wow.
Where
that's a good telescope then. If you
it's I think it's 400 mils.
Yeah. Because you can get the red spot on Jupiter with sort of household telescopes, but something like
Yeah, I'll have to get one, or I'll get Greggy's off him.
Oh, he's got one.
Yeah.
Tom's got a good one.
Yeah, Tom's got a good one. Yeah.
Well, Greg was coming round and looking at mine quite a bit, and then he got his own one. And
good old Reg.
Yeah, old Reg. And he rang me up and he said, right, I'm going after Jupiter now tonight with my telescope.
Oh, right.
And then he rang me up and he said, I can't find it. Can you come round and help me find Jupiter? Yeah, because Jupiter's really hard to find, you know. And it's all about having the telescope as steady as possible. And I'd said that to him. I said, Greg, get it the right temperature and get it really, really steady. And then when I got round there, he'd put it on his kitchen table because he thought that was going to put it a little bit closer to Jupiter. I said, Greg,
looking through the
I like the logic.
Yeah.
450 million miles, Greg, you've got the table, and it was rocking around everywhere. So then we did find Jupiter, and then he was stoked. With the full moons going.
The job was done.
He is like super enthusiastic about it all, isn't he?
He loves it.
Yeah, he does.
The moon is one of the best things to look at, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can look at the moon.
You can see the craters and everything, even through the binoculars. It's good, isn't it?
My uncle was saying like he like looks at the sun because the sun is like spinning.
Oh, does he do that with a piece of paper, or does he actually? Has he got a filter?
No, he's got some kind of filter. So as the sun is spinning, so it's like the Doppler effect. So it changes the frequency, like the light that's coming off it. So like one side is like red because of like you're going into longer frequency, and the other side is blue because it's going into higher frequency. And like my uncle's kind of into all of that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's good. I must like sit him down and have a good chat with him about it all whilst he's still here.
Yeah, absolutely. And get some notes down.
I'll lend you some of this recording equipment.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well actually I was in a boat in South Africa. I was like going diving, and there was a guy so we were all on the boat and we had like an amazing day, and the guy in the boat was like some American bloke from like Hawaii, and I was just like, what were you doing here? And he's just like, well, I've come to see there was some sort of solar eclipse. And I just like, my uncle goes all over the world. So my uncle, like even in like 1970, went to Iran and has been to Mongolia, and all these things, before like travel was invented in my eyes.
Yeah.
And and I said, oh yeah, my uncle, he goes around and does all this kind of stuff, and he's just like, what's his name? And I said, it's like David Braham, he's from Wales. And he was just like, gee man, I know him. And he was the professor of astronomy from Honolulu.
Wow.
And so he's just like, gee, send him my regards.
Gosh.
From the sublime squared to the ridiculous. You've got an opportunity now on Crest, right, Gus, to set a couple of things straight. Now, I understand that you have actually been present for both of Gary Lewis's submissions to Surf Trip Nightmares on Crest.
Really? No.
Gary wrote in actually with some comments that you'd had. Just wanted to set the record straight on a few of these. So very quickly, we can start with this van that rolled backwards.
Oh yes.
Jeep that rolled backwards.
Yeah.
What happened there?
So we were at Anchor Point, and Gary had already got out of the water, and me and George were getting out of the water, and at Anchor Point there's a car park, and there's probably about a 10 foot high wall, and then just drops off into the rocks, and then as me and George are walking up the steps, there's a van starts rolling towards us, it's coming at some kind of speed. And I was just like, oh, all right. So anyway, I just shimmied out the side, one side, and George went the other side, and this van just shot by. And then at the last minute, the van was silent, the engine wasn't running, and at the last minute, then a face appeared in the front of the van. The van was going backwards, which was this young girl. Yeah. And then we realised this van was just out of control. No. So the van just shot off the top of the drop and ended up upside down in the rocks.
And she was okay.
Well,
I shouldn't laugh.
That was to begin with, I was just God. Jesus, they nearly just run me down. Lewis is just sat on the bonnet of the car, just watching it all go by, and So anyway, the van goes off, and like just lands like upside down. Like we thought, like, everyone's like killed in there, but
You had to get a medical kit out.
yeah.
No.
But in actual fact, everyone was all right. So
that's the main thing.
Yeah. So
And you can also clarify for us, you were present for the other, in fact, the winning surf trip nightmare story. Tall Paul Donovan's back injury on day minus 2
his
of the
day
Mentawais
trip to the Mentawais.
A weekend in the Mentawais with Paul Donovan.
Well, that started before he even went.
Was it as bad / funny as
Oh, it was bad for him. Like, yeah, it was bad. Like,
You're smiling.
I was the one who had to push him through the airports in a wheelchair, plus all his 4 boards.
so we were outside the Jolly, like
That's
we were
right.
about to go like on a surf trip, and then what's the name of that surfer from Cornwall? Nice guy.
Spencer Hargreaves.
Spencer, yeah.
Oh,
So,
right.
Sorry.
so Spencer was like messing about, and like Spencer, I think, like pushed Paul or whatever. He then twisted and put his back out. So like Paul's in agony. So we was just like, right, just drink more, Paul, and you'll be fine. And then he gets to the airport, and like he was in agony there. And then he gets on the bumpy boat ride out to the Mentawais. So like we're all like deeply unsympathetic. But his back is like a question mark at this point. Like he's in such like spasm. And then actually it's evident that like he's got a real problem, hasn't he? Like he's been lying on his back at the bottom of the boat for like 2 days, hasn't he?
Oh,
and then like
that's
you know,
pretty savage.
yeah, then he has to go home, and yeah, that was bad. Fair Lewis looked after him then.
He
Didn't
did.
Yeah.
He did.
We've promised Paul that he's going to be able to come and set the record straight himself on that. And I can see that we obviously clearly owe Greg Owenright to reply down the line in the future.
Looks that way.
Don't we? Astronomy special.
Yeah. Greg, the enthusiastic astronomer. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, well, I remember the boys asking me about this, having a surf trip nightmare, and I just thought, no, I didn't have one. But then they ended up pointing out to me that perhaps I did have a few to speak of that I hadn't really thought were a nightmare. But Gus, what do you reckon that you've actually had any surf travel nightmares of your own, so to speak, or is everyone an absolute dream?
Well, actually, I go on surf trips to have surf travel trip nightmares. Because in actual fact, like, they're just the wilder and the badder those surf trips get. And then when I just go back to like the normality of like existence, it makes it more bearable. And like you just come home and you just think like, thank God that's over. Like after you've been like beaten to death in the cells, like crashed in hire cars, like got swept over in the reef somewhere, like had all the nasty locals like giving you a hard time, etc. You just think like, I feel quite chilled now.
Brilliant. Absolutely
Life's not so bad.
No.
Next up then, the right in West Oz by the sound of things, I reckon, for you.
Oh.
Seen that place?
Where's that? The box?
No, there's another one that they've been towing into now. We'll give Glyn Evans a ring now as soon as we finish recording.
That's where you want to have one of them big barrels, Gus.
Yeah. And me and Rhino, we'll see if we can get over there. We'll be in the
I'll
channel,
watch you from the boat.
screaming you in though. Go, yes!
I remember like the first time me, like Gary and Duggan, we went to Binging. This is probably like about 35 years ago. There was like 13 of us at Binging. Max.
When Binging is a village with chirping cockerels and not much else.
But it wasn't even a village.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, one warung and stuff.
Yeah.
And like Binging is like the easiest barrel.
Amazing.
And so like we turn up there. I did everything I possibly. I would just be like, Gary, what's going wrong? Like I've stalled, I've faded, I've done everything. And I still didn't get a barrel there. I got like some massive cut on my back. Because you know like the inside section there, I can't remember what it's called.
In Bingin,
Yeah.
there's just like...
Lockjaws or something.
Oh, I don't know, but it's really... It's like almost like a shallow closeout,
It's a
isn't it?
closeout. It's a
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
closeout.
basically I remember everyone saying like, whatever you do, don't try and surf across that. And then it was like low tide of being in, and like I'd taken off in the wave, and like, because I had like so much speed, and which I wasn't like, you know, that doesn't normally happen to me. So I was just like flying, absolutely flying across, and like, you know, and then that last like section drained, and I just thought, right, I'm having it. And then so I went flying across it with like more speed than I've ever had. And then I can remember just thinking, right, I'll try and do like a massive cutback. So, and then I cut back and I'd run out of water. I can remember just like flopping on my back from about 6 or 7 foot up in the air onto that coral. And I've still got the scars now.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And the little massage lady spent the afternoon picking all the coral out of my back.
Which is a primary source of entertainment, I think.
Yeah.
Gus, can I thank you several times over? Firstly, I want to thank you on behalf of Crest. I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed the tales as much as us. Secondly, can I thank you personally for the chance to chat over some of these stories, which I knew existed, but I hadn't actually had the chance to hear in person. And thirdly, it's 2020. I've got to thank you on behalf of the country for the work that you do while earning the time and means with which you carry out all these crazy escapades.
Cheers.
You deserve everything that happens to you, both good and bad. So the scars are binging, and the yet to take place inside out barrel.
I will have one of those.
You will have, and it will be documented.
It might be the last thing I ever do.
You've been an absolutely fabulous guest. Diolch yn fawr.
Merci.
Thanks,
Thank
Gus.
you.
Honestly, Gus, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk in with you today, and I actually feel quite honoured to have a chat with you. And Tom, thanks for inviting me onto the podcast. I was obviously
Cheers, Tom.
I'm honoured as well. Thanks very much.
Yeah, all good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, believe it or not, but this was in fact the 20th episode of Crest. If you've enjoyed Gus's tales today and aren't yet a subscriber, then can I point out that there are 19 other episodes and some other great guests with their own stories to tell. And one of those back issue A-listers is going to tell you where to find us.
Thanks, Tom. Crest can be found through YouTube, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and we love to hear your feedback from listeners. Our email address is castcrest@gmail.com, and we're also contactable through Instagram, where you can follow us to get up-to-date information on future guests and episodes. Next week, Tom will be chatting to Chris Nelson and Demi Taylor, the people behind the Approaching Lines and London Surf Film Festivals. You may have watched some of these movies that they shared during the lockdown. Well, we'll be hearing about what's hot in terms of surf films this autumn, and what showings or streamings they've got planned for the future. Watch out for it next Monday, as usual, and until then, can we say once more, thanks for listening, and see you again soon.
Wow.
Yeah, not start.
Good night.
Cheers, boys. Okay. Thanks for having me as a guest.
Absolutely brilliant.